I heard the words before I saw her face, and they struck like a slap across years of quiet dignity. "Why is that old parasite here? We have no room for you." The shout blew through my beach house like a winter gust, rattling the shells on the windowsill I had glued there by hand. I stood in my own doorway with the keys trembling between my fingers, staring past my daughter-in-law Megan to the wreckage behind her. Wet towels slumped over wicker, beer cans glinting in the sun, children's sneakers skidding across my polished deck, and smoke from a grill I did not own curling up into the clear blue morning. I had arrived just after 8:10 a.m., expecting the soft hush I had tended for 2 decades. Instead, I found an occupation. She planted herself in the frame as if she had paid the mortgage, wearing my apron, the one with the tiny rosebud cross-stitches I had stitched in a winter of widowed silence, and met my gaze with a kind of practiced contempt that grows when no one calls it by name. "Robert told me we could use the place," she said, voice sweetened with false patience. "We're doing something productive here. You just come to complain and interrupt a family weekend." Her family fanned out behind her like a chorus. Her sister Veronica, 2 teenagers thundering on the stairs, a mother with lacquered hair who appraised me as if I were a wrong address, and strangers draped over my furniture. They did not avert their eyes. Why would they? In the story Megan had written, I was an obstacle, not an owner. I asked for my son. She said he was working, as if responsibility and decency were opposite ends of a seesaw. Then, with the crisp finality of a stamp on a form, she said the rooms were taken, the kitchen was in use, and my presence would only cause unnecessary tension. The words were efficient, practiced, and designed to make me forget that every inch of board under her feet had once been raw lumber I carried with my own aching hands. For a long breath, I said nothing. Then I looked past her shoulder to the garden I had planted with money I saved working from 4:30 a.m. to 11 p.m., hemming dresses and stitching dreams until my fingers bled. My geraniums wore scuffs like bruises. Something inside me refused to break. I walked away, not because I accepted her verdict, but because war is won in the planning, not in the first shout. As the gravel crunched beneath my shoes, memory bent time backward. I could smell the first summer the foundation was poured. I was 50, newly widowed and ferociously alive, a seamstress with exactly $45,000 scraped together in envelopes and bank slips. The architect had asked if I understood the costs. I had opened my savings book and let the numbers speak for me. Robert was 25 then, eyes bright as the new brass hinges, cradling a bundle of nails like a bouquet. We argued about the color of the kitchen walls and where the windows should invite the sea in. When the house stood, he hugged me on the deck and promised to tell his future family that his mother had built a paradise with a needle and a spine of iron. I carried those words like a charm against loneliness. That charm felt thin now. At 7:05 p.m., the hotel room swallowed me and my anger whole. I lay awake, listening to the ocean, cataloging every insult, every stain I had glimpsed through the doorway. Dawn found me with a plan and a cup of bitter coffee. Before 9 a.m., I was back at my gate ringing my own bell. Veronica answered in pajamas, her indifference a uniform. "Your things are in bags in the garage," she said, to keep them out of the way. In the kitchen, greasy plates wobbled in my sink like surrendered soldiers. My best pots, bought one by one with months of small economies, were scarred. When I asked after my china, Veronica shrugged. Some broke. The kids were playing in my bedroom. A stranger's children snored across my quilt, while Megan's mother folded my dresses into black trash bags with the brisk competence of a charity drop-off. I climbed to the ensuite to catch my breath and felt it leave me for good. The hidden closet I had designed into the wall, the one even Robert had forgotten, was gaped open, its seams pried. Documents were rumpled, jewelry boxes unlatched, the velvet negatives of my mother's pearls and my husband's gold watch pressed flat. Worse waited beneath the file. Legal forms, crisp and recent, named Robert Crawford and Megan Dyson as petitioners in a request to transfer ownership, due to the current owner's cognitive decline and inability to manage valuable assets. A bargain basement appraisal placed my paradise at $300,000. In Megan's round handwriting, a note. With this money, we can buy a bigger apartment and send the kids to private school. Need R to sign. And for the old lady not to cause trouble. I took pictures of everything. Stains on porcelain, scuffs on oak, the paper trail of a theft with table manners, and slid the documents into my bag. On the terrace, Megan was on the phone, voice bright. I paused at the top of the stairs and listened to my future in someone else's mouth. "It's easy, Mom," she said. "Since Robert is an only child, we claim early inheritance because of her incapacity. We already paid that clinic doctor $50 for the report." She laughed then, light and careless, and the sound clarified everything. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a plan. I walked out without a word. Fury sharpened to resolve like glass cooled in seawater. If they thought Eleanor Crawford was a lone old woman leaning on sentiment, they had miscounted. I had a seamstress's patience, a widow's memory, and a ledger's worth of proof. By noon, I was at the bank, asking for balances and barricades. By 4 p.m., I sat across from a lawyer who listened the way surgeons look at scans. "Can you pay my fee?" he asked. I told him I could do so today. He smiled as if the first domino had finally been tapped. The second would fall at 8 a.m. tomorrow, on my porch, in front of everyone who had ever mistaken gentleness for surrender. When the clock struck 8 a.m. the next morning, my driveway filled with the sound of law and consequence. Attorney Thomas Gallagher stepped out of his car carrying 3 folders thick with proof, followed by a uniformed officer and a notary public. I stood beside them, in my best gray suit, the morning wind pulling at my hair as if the sea itself were holding its breath. Megan's laughter died mid-sentence when she saw us coming. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the terrace tiles I had chosen 20 years earlier. Thomas's voice carried across the property like a judge's gavel. "Mrs. Eleanor Crawford is the sole owner of this residence. We are here under a court-ordered eviction for illegal trespassing." Megan rushed forward, waving her hands. "You can't do this. My husband is her son. He gave us permission." The officer's reply was calm and final. "Ma'am, do you have documents proving ownership or tenancy?" Megan faltered. "No, but—" Thomas laid out the originals. The deed in my name, tax receipts, and utility bills all under my signature. The notary recorded every word as the law reclaimed what love had abandoned. When Megan's mother appeared, demanding explanations, I met her gaze and said quietly, "What's happening is that thieves are being treated as thieves." Her daughter's face drained of color. Veronica tried to film the scene, muttering about elder abuse, but the officer confiscated her phone. My lawyer listed the charges: theft of jewelry, falsification of medical documents, attempted asset fraud. Megan's denials shrank with each accusation until Robert's car skidded into the driveway. He looked frantic, almost boyish again, until the officer turned to him and said, "Sir, you are being cited as an accomplice in attempted property fraud." I took the folded documents from my bag and placed them in his hands. "You were going to sign these, weren't you?" He couldn't answer. His lips moved, but no sound came. Megan hissed beside him. "Tell her she's confused. Tell her she's sick." I stared straight at her. "I'm not senile, Megan. I'm perfectly capable of defending myself." The mask slipped from her face, revealing something brittle and ugly underneath. She screamed that I was destroying the family. I told her I was saving what little was left of it. Robert tried to intervene, pleading for calm, but the damage was already done. "You let her humiliate me," I said. "You watched and did nothing." He whispered that it was all for his children, for the family's future. "By stealing from your mother?" I asked. "That's your legacy to them?" He said nothing. The silence between us was an obituary for the son I had raised. Thomas handed him the official notice to appear in court within 3 days. The officer warned that kinship offered no shield against criminal law. Megan's mother began crying, insisting that families don't sue families. Families also don't commit fraud, I replied. My voice was calm, steady, the kind of calm that comes only when you know the battle is already won. They had 2 hours to leave. I watched as they scrambled through my house, stuffing bags, yelling, accusing each other. Megan's mother cursed her daughter. Veronica tried to film again until the officer threatened arrest. The children cried as toys and clothes were flung into suitcases. One small boy tugged my sleeve and asked, "Why are you making us go?" We didn't do anything. I bent down and said softly, "You're right, sweetheart. This isn't your fault. But this house isn't yours either." Megan snatched the child away, hurling insults over her shoulder. "You'll regret this, you bitter old woman!" "We'll appeal. We'll prove you're crazy." I smiled faintly. "Then I'll see you in court." Robert was the last to approach me, carrying 2 heavy suitcases and the weight of his choices. "Mom, please," he said. "We can fix this." "Let's settle as a family." I asked how. "You keep the house. We return your jewelry. You drop the lawsuits." I asked if the fake dementia report was also just a misunderstanding. He had no answer. I pressed on. "And humiliating me? Calling me a parasite? Was that love too?" His eyes filled with tears. "You always remind me of your sacrifices. You make me feel like a failure." I looked at him and finally understood. His betrayal was born not from greed, but from shame. He couldn't stand being the son of a woman who had done more with less than he ever could with plenty. "You think my strength made you weak," I told him. "But weakness was your choice." When the final minute ticked down, the officer called time. They filed into their cars, Megan glaring, Robert avoiding my eyes, and drove away down the road that cut between the dunes. I stood in the doorway, watching the dust rise and vanish. Thomas turned to me. "You've got your house back, Mrs. Crawford." Officially, I nodded, though victory felt more like silence than triumph. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Tired," I said, "but free." By dusk, the house was quiet again. The kind of quiet that comes after storms, when the debris is gone and the air smells of salt and renewal. I sat on the terrace in my old wicker chair and watched the horizon bleed gold into the sea. Tomorrow, there would be police reports to file and locks to change, but tonight the house breathed with me again. It was mine, earned, defended, and finally restored. For weeks after the eviction, the house felt like a wounded animal I was nursing back to health. Every room held scars, cigarette burns on my polished wood floors, empty bottles behind the sofa, the faint outline of greasy palms on my glass cabinets. I worked from sunrise to sunset, scrubbing, repairing, reclaiming. There was a kind of poetry in it, like stitching back together a torn dress, thread by thread. Each motion, each sweep of my rag whispered the same word. Mine. The first night everything was clean again, I lit a candle on the dining table, poured a single glass of wine, and ate dinner facing the sea. No voices, no footsteps, no insults. Just the sound of the waves and the hum of the refrigerator. Familiar. Faithful. It felt like my husband, Robert Sr., was there again. For a moment, I closed my eyes and whispered, "I finally did it, love." I stood up for myself. 3 days later, my lawyer called. "Eleanor," Thomas said, "you might want to sit down." My stomach tightened. They've filed a counterclaim, he continued. Megan's accusing you of mental cruelty and emotional harassment. She claims you manipulated your son for years. I laughed bitterly. She's consistent. I'll give her that. What are our chances? He exhaled. Legally, they have no case, but it will get ugly. They're trying to destroy your reputation to pressure a settlement. Are you ready for that? I took a long breath. Thomas, I've spent a lifetime being quiet so others could speak louder. Let them talk. I'll bring the truth. And so began the second war. The tabloids ate it up. Widow sued by her own family. Headlines twisted my story into entertainment. Reporters camped outside my gate, calling me greedy, manipulative, bitter. Megan loved the attention. She smiled in every photo, pretending to be the victim. Robert stayed silent. That silence hurt more than any insult ever could. Thomas advised me to stay calm. They're building noise, not evidence, he said. But one night, as I scrolled through an article titled Family Feud, When Mothers Refuse to Let Go, I saw the photo of my house, my sanctuary, labeled the disputed property. The word disputed made my blood boil. The next morning, I walked into Thomas's office with a folder under my arm. "Was that?" he asked. I placed it on his desk. "Proof," I said. Inside were letters Robert had written me over the years, thanking me for helping him through college, for the down payment on his first car, for raising him after his father's death. I'd kept everything. "You think I'm manipulative?" I said quietly. "Let's show the world what sacrifice looks like on paper." A week later, we stood before the court again. Megan wore black this time, pretending at humility. Her lawyer spoke first, painting me as a controlling matriarch who refused to relinquish power. When it was my turn, Thomas handed me the stack of letters. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. I've been called many things in my life. Poor, stubborn, proud, but never dishonest, I began. For 30 years, I worked as a seamstress. I built a home with my bare hands. My husband and I dreamed it would be our family's legacy. When he died, I raised our son alone. I gave him this house, not because I was controlling, but because I wanted him to have something solid in the world that takes everything. And when his wife came along, I opened my doors. I fed them. I gave them space. I gave them everything, until they decided they wanted more than I could give. I lifted one of Robert's letters and read aloud. "Mom, I don't deserve you. You're the strongest woman I know. I hope one day I can make you proud." My voice cracked, but I kept reading. "Your Honor, this doesn't sound like a son oppressed by cruelty. This sounds like a son who once knew love." The courtroom was silent. Even Megan's lawyer looked uneasy. Then, for the first time in months, Robert spoke. His voice was hoarse, his face pale. "Mom," he said, "I never wanted any of this. Megan said the inheritance was our right. She said you'd be fine. I believed her because it was easier than standing up to her. I'm sorry." Megan turned on him instantly. "You coward! You're throwing me under the bus?" The judge banged his gavel for silence. "Enough!" In that moment, I realized something vital. This was never just about money or property. It was about power. Megan thrived on control, and when I took mine back, her entire illusion collapsed. The trial ended quickly after that. The counterclaim was dismissed. Megan stormed out of the courtroom, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. Outside, the press waited. Microphones in my face, cameras flashing, voices shouting questions. "Mrs. Crawford, any comment?" I looked straight into the lenses and said calmly, "Love without respect is a slow kind of theft. I just stopped being robbed." That quote ended up on every headline the next morning. 2 weeks later, Robert came alone. He stood awkwardly at my door, holding a paper bag of groceries. "You don't have to do that," I told him. He shrugged. "I know. I just wanted to." We sat on the porch, eating sandwiches like strangers learning each other's names again. He told me he'd filed for divorce. He wanted to rebuild, to make amends. I didn't answer right away. I just looked out at the sea and said, "You have to rebuild yourself first. The rest will follow." When he left, he hugged me, really hugged me, for the first time in years. And in that embrace, I felt both the weight of loss and the fragile promise of redemption. That night, I opened every window in the house. The ocean air rushed in, cool and forgiving. I walked from room to room, touching walls, opening closets, reclaiming every inch of the life I had fought for. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like home again. The next morning, I sat by the window with a cup of coffee and whispered to no one in particular, "Peace isn't free. You earn it, one heartbreak at a time." If my story touched you, share it with someone who needs courage to stand up for themselves. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true stories of strength, betrayal, and second chances.